I think Pure Flix may have to change their name after this. Unplanned tells the true story of Abby Johnson, who is the youngest woman ever to become a clinic director for Planned Parenthood, America's biggest abortion provider. She faces conflict with her parents and husband, who are against what she's doing, but she continues for 8 years, believing that she's doing a great service to women. However, she has some shocking experiences and revelations that shift her away from her job, and she goes on to become, as she is today, a pro-life activist and whistleblower. The story of Abby Johnson is one that I've been familiar with for a while now, and when I learned that Pure Flix was working on a movie based on her memoir, I was cautiously optimistic. What caught my attention even more was when it was announced that the MPAA had assigned the movie an R rating. I couldn't believe it. For an independent movie made by Christian filmmakers, that is unprecedented. It gave me the feeling that the Christian film industry was starting to get real and take some risks. So I went into the theater ready for this movie, thinking, could this be a game changer for Pure Flix? The answer? Yes and no. I left the theater and drove home very flustered, which you may expect because of what we see in the movie, but also because I didn't know what to think. I had a lot of conflicting thoughts that I found difficult to summarize into one, but I slept on it, and I think I've got my thoughts together. The biggest praise I can give this movie is that it is bold and unflinching in its depiction of abortion and the serious health risks that it causes to the mother. The R rating has gotten mixed reception from people involved with this movie, with some saying it was warranted, while others saying it was ridiculous. Honestly, I don't know how they couldn't have considered an R rating as even a possibility, because there are 4 or 5 scenes that are filmed in a very graphic manner. One in particular being when Abby herself has her second abortion, and she has it by means of the RU-486 pill. She's told that it would gently empty out her uterus, but instead it causes excruciating pain as we see bloody lumps falling from her. The way the sequence is shot and edited, it feels like something out of a horror movie. Because of scenes like these, it is legitimately the first time that I was unsettled watching a Pure Flix movie. Another disturbing part, and this was the big awakening moment for Abby, is when she's called in to assist with the first trimester abortion. And as she holds the ultrasound, she witnesses the baby trying to squirm away from the catheter as it gets torn apart by the suction. Now admittedly, the computer-generated ultrasound looks too crystal clear. If you've seen a real ultrasound, you know how hazy it looks, and it can be hard to distinguish what's what if you're not a doctor. I know they probably wanted to make it visible to the audience, but I feel that they should have worked harder to fully replicate what Abby saw. I still found the scene troubling to watch, but at the same time the image just didn't look quite right. So I was overall impressed by the backbone this movie had to deliver such a dark experience. However, there are a few things that subtract from that experience. One of them being the non-stop voiceover from Abby. There are a few times where it starts at such an unnecessary moment, and I was kind of muttering "shut up" under my breath. This movie has an equally excessive amount of narration to Molly's Game, and it's just as needless. Another thing is that the movie has a real problem with tone, primarily because of the song choices. Now granted, the filmmakers were denied the rights to use songs by several music labels, so I can understand that their music library was a bit limited. But more than once, the song choice creates the feeling that you're not watching the same movie. For example, after Abby gets promoted to clinic director, she discusses with her employees of how to deal with Hurricane Ike, and when they get to work, the soundtrack breaks into Overcomer by Mandisa. It's such an upbeat track that it doesn't mesh with the gritty tone that the movie goes for at other times. And that's really what kept me from liking this movie as much as I wanted to. There are times where I'm thinking, man, Pure Flix is really upping their game, and then other times where I'm just kind of having flashbacks to some of their worst movies. There's also the title song by Matthew West that bookends the film. It just has too much of an uplifting feel, and even has a few of the same lyrics as another song of his called Untold. The recent Gosnell movie had a consistently gritty atmosphere that worked for its subject matter, and the closing song by Five for Fighting had somber lyrics and haunting piano chords. Had the makers of Unplanned taken more notes from that, it would have made a more impactful film. That being said, Unplanned does still have some other strengths worthy of a mention. Ashley Bratcher turns in a strong performance as Abby Johnson, despite having little resemblance to a real-life counterpart. I would really like to see her pick up more roles. This movie is directed by the writers of God's Not Dead, which was very black and white in its portrayal of groups of people. Anyone who's Christian can do no wrong, and any non-believer is hostile and mean-spirited, which is the worst decision you can make if you're trying to change hearts and minds of those who don't share your beliefs. Which is why one of the things I'm very happy to report about this movie is that there is nothing black and white about it. As you would expect, there are some depraved individuals working for Planned Parenthood, which we know there are in reality, not just from Abby's story, but from a number of first-hand accounts. But the movie also acknowledges that there are some people working there with the best of intentions who do have a conscience. Abby's not the only one. There's also like a co-worker who responds negatively with her when their boss instructs them to double their abortion quotas, because it's completely against their mission statement that says they aim to make abortion rare. On the other side, there are those very kind people among the pro-life crowd, some of whom Abby eventually goes on to work with. But then there's also these angry protesters, some in Grim Reaper costumes, who yell slang judgmental comments at young women whom Abby is escorting into the building. Thus, in terms of the movie's portrayal of different groups of people, it is fair and balanced. Abby Johnson has claimed that nothing about the movie is over-dramatized or embellished, and while it does follow her memoir very closely, I would have to disagree with her only in the case of some of the editing. The second time the movie shows the moment where Abby sees the ultrasound, it cuts back and forth between that and the leaders of the Coalition for Life praying over barrels of aborted fetuses. I don't know if both those things really happen at the same time. I'm going to go out on a limb and say probably not. Most of the time, the movie does do a good job keeping the focus on Abby's story and what she saw, but this was when it got distracted for the sake of what is a total preach to the choir moment, nothing more and nothing less. Those who are pro-life will no doubt have an emotional experience with this movie, and there are also going to be those who will throw stones no matter what. As for everyone in between, I'm really not sure. I did read a post from a pro-choice reviewer who found the movie challenging, and I think that's great, but I don't think everyone's going to have the same response. Its heart is in the right place, it doesn't generalize people, and there are some really well-made scenes. But its biggest weakness is how uneven it is, and I think that may keep some audiences from being able to fully take it seriously. If you consider yourself pro-choice but have an open mind, or if you're on the fence regarding the issue, I recommend you see the movie, just to see if you can take anything away from it. Whether you do or don't take anything away from it, I can understand either. For me, I had some major problems with it, but at the end of the day, I am glad I saw it, and I find enough to bring the score up to a 62% for Unplanned. That's a wrap, thank you for watching, I hope you found this review helpful. Like if you liked, subscribe for more. This is Pop Culture, I'm Alex Bob.